I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is character education, 60-day public view. Ms. Kleber, would you like to share with us your thoughts?
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight regarding something on the agenda, Character Education 60-Day Public View. I have spoken to some people in the Character Education Advisory Board and was told that they were never told about the programs and they just kept going over and over on what were common values of the group, and they didn't feel a consensus was ever made. The people I spoke to said that they had no input on the programs being reviewed. I have spent some time looking at the programs on the agenda. Most of the time was spent on 7 mindsets and Character Strong. I went through a sample session for Character Strong for 9th grade. It was session 7, To Be List, part 2. The session was 115 pages long, and according to the literature, it should only take about 30 minutes to do. They state that the lesson will explore values. When are our students supposed to be doing these sessions? High school students do not have hours upon hours of free time during the school day, while no student or teacher in the district has much free time during school hours. Which teachers will be heading this? English teachers, math teachers, coaches? Or are you planning on having an elective for this new program? Will you be letting parents know that their children will be losing academic time to participate in these exercises? In high school, it stated that it was 25 lessons per grade. Will parents have the choice to opt into these lessons, or is it going to be given to all children with no parental input? I really do not see when our students or teachers are supposed to be doing all of this extra work that these lessons will be imposing on them. We need our kids to focus on academics. Academics should be our top priority of the school district, like it has been for decades. Taking time away to do these lessons will not be beneficial. I know that this is supposed to be up for public review for 60 days. I would appreciate it if you were to reconsider and wait. I hope you all sit down and do sample sessions like I did, and let me know in the next meeting when you think our children and staff will be able to do this without affecting any academics. I know that both Sebastian and Mimi do not have any extra time in their schedule. Sebastian is presently taking a course in summer school as he has a full load of advanced courses this upcoming school year. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Kleber. Mr. Caruth?
Mrs. Penn.
President Anderson, Mr. Caruth, members of the board. This agenda item typically falls under the consent agenda. Whenever we are putting a curriculum up for public review that has historically been a consent agenda item, we have pulled this evening and made it its own personal individual item because we want to make sure that we are being completely abundantly transparent with the process. And with that, character education has been an important part of the Vail School District. You know, I only go back to 1999 with my employment in this district, but at that time in 1999, we had the 6 pillars of character at Mesquite Elementary, and for years, the 6 pillars of character were written on the pillars as you walk down the walkway. And it was part of how we helped students understand what it meant and what it looked like for the ACT statement to be acted out, so that it was not just a document on the wall, but they had examples of what that meant. Back in September, I think, of the 2021-2022 school year, we realized that there was some conversations that needed to happen in our community around character education. And we realized that it was becoming a place of division. And we wanted very desperately to make sure that we could pull everyone together and find the place where our community agreed, knowing that families had a wide range, but our goal was to narrow down and say, these are the values that we can stand behind as a community. And so the Character Education Advisory Board worked on that, and the document that came out of that will be brought to you in the future for board approval. The draft of that has been in front of you several times already, and it's a focus on the values of integrity, respect for self, respect for others, courage, perseverance, resilience, and work ethic. With those values clearly identified, our goal is to be able to stand side by side with parents and reinforce those values in the schools. The Character Education Advisory Board helped provide the language and the description and the definition of what each of those looked like, because we also didn't want the situation where we talked about respect for self and then that was interpreted in different ways, or respect for others and that was interpreted in different ways. So our document clearly defines what that means to us in Vail. And as we created this document from the work of the committee, we then looked at character education programs that had been brought forward from our sites. And we went through and crosswalked the lessons to those values to see if it was in fact a curriculum or program that that aligned with the values that were identified in that committee work. We found that of the 5 programs that we looked at, 4 of them met the criteria that we were looking for. 1 of them did not. So that one is not being brought forward for public review. The process that goes from here is if you as a board decide to put up for public review for 60 days, we'll upload a link on our website that will contain 3 of the 4 curriculum with a place for parents to provide input. The 4th is not an electronic-based curriculum. It is a hard copy-based curriculum. And so that will be available here at the Calvin Baker Leadership Center for public review. We will be holding a meeting with the advisory board during that window to walk them through examples of those lessons. A district administration team that did the crosswalk looked at each of those lessons. So as an example, the to-be list, we found that as something that shifted the thinking around from what is it that I want to do to who is it that I want to be. And so what is the content of my character that I want to focus on? And that was in alignment with the characters and the values and the conversations that we had with the advisory board meeting. So if there is approval to put this on display for 60 days, then during that time, we'll gather feedback from the public. We will hold the meeting with the advisory board, walk them through. We will bring the curriculum, some lesson samples to you. In our timeline, there are 2 different meetings where we'll bring 2 curriculum at each of those different meetings to show you and let you have a flavor of that. You will also have access to them for your own, you can look through them on your own whenever that works for you, but we'll do it publicly as well. And then after all of that process, then we'll come back and ask for your direction on where we go from there. So with that, administration recommends that the Vail School District Governing Board follow the approve the following programs for the 60-day public review as presented. And those programs are Caring Schools Communities, Second Step, 7 Mindsets, and Character Strong.
I'll accept a motion.
I'll move.
Mr. Aiken moves. I'll second. Ms. Tippett seconds. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. King?
Yeah, in the event at the end of the 60-day review process, we find that these aren't, they don't necessarily hit the benchmarks that we would like them to see, we can kind of reject these and go for basically bring a new process, new curriculums and everything else back.
Yeah, Mr. King, yes, that's the purpose of putting there's two pieces to this. One of the reasons we want to start the clock now is and while that clock is ticking, so to speak, do a more thorough review with the community, is so that we can use those materials if they're approved shortly after the beginning of the new school year. But if at the end of the review period there is question about what those materials are, then those questions and that decision of whether or not to approve those materials rests with the board.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Tippett?
To the concern about the amount of time that character education takes in the classroom, and I recognize that character education is something that we have done for quite a long time, and I also recognize the value in character education in preventing things like what happened in Uvalde, Texas. So I see as hardening school targets as one point of preventing that, but taking care of our students from the time they enter a kindergarten till the time they graduate is another point of an intervention. And we have interventions every day when we meet those children in the classroom. And character education is a big part of that. How do we help children solve their differences? How do we help our children solve disputes in the classroom? That's the basis of character education. So I have a lot of value for that. How much time do you think character education takes in the classroom?
So President Anderson, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, there is a range. So for the primary grades, it is not an everyday thing. It may be one lesson a week that is 30 or 40 minutes for an 8-week session or a 12-week session. At the high school level, there is a structure in place. I'll give the example of Micah Mountain, but each of the high schools may have a different solution to how this is presented. At Micah Mountain, there is a leadership class for freshmen, and it is the intent of that site to use this during that leadership course. It wouldn't necessarily be something that would be part of the sophomore, junior, or senior year, so it would have no impact there, but it would be part of a required, and I say the word required, I think that it's not a mandatory class, but it is a recommended class in the freshman level. So, and I actually had, as we were looking through one of the curriculums, I did call one of the principals to say, this looks like a lot of content, and how are we going to manage this at the site? And their response was that they would not be using the entire content, but they would be able to take pieces of that. What we would like to be able to do, though, is to bring the entire content forward, and that way we don't have to say only use this or only use that. There's some discretion at the site for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mr. Aiken?
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. I wanted to tag on to what Ms. Tippett said in response to what Ms. Kleber said. Ms. Kleber, I apologize if I'm misparaphrasing you, but I think what you said was that we need to get back to academics. And in my opinion, that's just a foolish comment to say something like that, because character education is every bit as important. And if we just disregard it altogether, then we are being foolish. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I was part of this committee. I attended most of the meetings. I think there were 30 to 40 community members involved in 6 or 7 meetings to develop these character education components. They were very active discussions, and I think everyone came to agree on the process and the outcome. It was not the charge of the committee to develop curriculum. The charge of the committee was to get good input from various walks of life in our community. What is important in character education, and it was very involved. But it was not the charge of the committee to develop curriculum. That's why we have our staff and administration. I think it's wonderful that we are putting it out in the community for parents and community members to review what we propose. And also, I'm very happy that we have a portion of the website to get background and comments on any concerns any community member or parent has. And it appears that from the outline of the process that community members and parents are going to be very well advised in advance of the opportunity to review what we propose. So I appreciate the work that you've done. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Yes.
Can I clarify the time period that board members will have the opportunity to have access to the curriculum? Do we have the full 60 days to look at it, or do we just have a short window once we log in?
Mrs. Penn.
President Anderson, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, you will have the entire 60 days. We will just, of those 60 days and following those 60 days, we'll have some additional opportunities to focus in on this even as a group.
Some of those, just to clarify, I think that some of those materials require a login to access, and there's a time limit on that access. So if you request a login, you may have a time limit to review those things before that temporary login expires, but that doesn't prevent anyone from requesting another login if they want additional time to be able to do that. Okay. So because they're copyrighted materials and that copyright requires a login to be able to do that, it can't be a login that is active for 60 consecutive days. But there's no prevention from somebody requesting multiple access, multiple temporary passwords, so that they have time to thoroughly review the material.
Appreciate the clarification and the reality that we are working with the company to provide this. And so those limitations don't come from us, they come from the publisher.
Okay, any other comments or questions? I will call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 2022-2023 employment contracts for return